Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Ethan had always been a calm man. Thursday nights were the times when his wife, Lisa, went out with her friends, and he used those evenings to relax at home without any worries. It had been part of his routine for years, and Ethan never questioned it. He trusted Lisa completely. However, that week, something happened that shook his peace of mind. During a break at work, Ethan was talking to his longtime colleague, Blake. The conversation flowed naturally until Blake mentioned something that made Ethan's blood run cold. "Hey, I'm not sure if it was her, but I think I saw Lisa walking into a motel with a few girlfriends and some guys last week." Blake said it casually, without realizing the consequences. But for Ethan, those words echoed like a sudden storm in a clear sky. In that moment, he tried not to react. He forced a smile, shrugged as if it were just a bad joke. It couldn't be true. Lisa wasn't the type of person who would do something like that, right? No matter how hard he tried to brush the thought away, the doubt was already there. It felt like a tiny crack that grew more and more with each passing minute. In the days that followed, Blake's words kept running through Ethan's mind. He fought the feeling, trying to convince himself it was a misunderstanding. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe Blake was mistaken, he told himself over and over. But the uncertainty was eating him up inside. He needed to be sure. When Thursday arrived, something in Ethan changed. Lisa got ready as usual, casual, calm, gave him a goodbye kiss, and left, just like she did every week. Ethan watched in silence. But this time, he didn't settle into the couch to watch the game. He waited a few minutes, just enough to give her a head start, then grabbed his car keys. At that moment, his heart was racing faster than he wanted to admit. He drove in silence, focused on the road, repeating to himself that he was probably overreacting. But as he approached the bar where Lisa usually met her friends, a sense of unease washed over him. He parked on a side street where he could watch without being noticed. Getting out of the car, Ethan felt a growing tightness in his chest. He walked toward the entrance of the bar. The loud music and flashing lights were a stark contrast to the whirlwind inside him. When he went in, his eyes darted from side to side, searching for Lisa among the crowd. The music and chatter around him seemed to fade away when he finally spotted her. There she was, laughing at something someone had said, drink in hand. Up to that moment, nothing seemed unusual. But then Ethan noticed she wasn't sitting on her own. She was sitting on another man's lap. Right then, time seemed to stop for Ethan. What he feared most, what he didn't want to believe, was there in front of his eyes. Ethan froze at the bar's entrance, as if the world around him had gone silent. The scene before him unfolded in slow motion. He blinked several times, hoping his eyes were playing tricks on him, but the image remained. Lisa was on another man's lap, laughing at whatever he was saying, her body relaxed and comfortable, like it was some casual meetup with no secrets involved. For her, nothing had changed. But for Ethan, everything had collapsed. He took a deep breath, trying to control the rush of emotions threatening to explode. Anger rose inside him like a tidal wave, but it was held back by shock and disappointment. The bar was crowded, yet he barely noticed anyone else. All he saw was the betrayal right in front of him. Each step he took toward the table felt heavier than the one before, as though the ground was crumbling under his feet. Lisa still hadn't noticed him. The smile on her face began to fade as everyone at the table turned to look at him, and then she finally saw him too. Lisa's eyes went wide for a second, but she quickly tried to hide it. The smile returned, forced now, and she stood up hurriedly, smoothing her dress while casting nervous looks at the friends around the table. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" Her voice trembled a bit, but there was a note of forced surprise that he couldn't ignore. He stayed silent, his eyes locked on hers. There was no need to say anything, the silence was enough. He watched every small movement, every attempt she made to appear unbothered, but tension hung in the air, something even the laughter in the background couldn't mask. "It's just a joke. You know what I'm like, right?" Lisa let out a quick laugh, glancing at the man whose lap she'd been sitting on, as if she wanted him to back up her story. But Ethan didn't move. He didn't want to hear any excuses. Her face, which once radiated warmth and familiarity, now looked like a stranger's. Lisa took a step toward him as if to soften the situation, but Ethan backed away, keeping his gaze on her. That small distance was all he needed. She stopped, realizing something had changed forever. Right then, the silence between them became unbearable. Ethan looked around at the people laughing, oblivious to what was happening. How did it come to this? The question throbbed in his mind, but it no longer mattered. He already had all the answers he needed. Without a word, Ethan turned and started walking toward the door. Lisa stood there, stunned, as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. She knew the moment she'd been avoiding had arrived, but she didn't know what to do. And Ethan, his heart broken yet oddly clear-headed, just left, leaving behind everything they'd built together. He walked out of the bar with a steady stride, but he was falling apart inside. The cold night air hit him as soon as he passed through the door, but it wasn't enough to calm the heat of anger and pain burning inside him. He got into his car, hands shaking as he turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared, but he stayed there for a few seconds, staring into space. How did it get to this point? That moment felt surreal, like he was watching someone else's life. But it was his own. And the betrayal was real. As he drove back home, Ethan's mind was in total chaos. Memories of happier times with Lisa flashed by, contrasting with the image of her on another man's lap, laughing like nothing else mattered. What else was she hiding? Were all those Thursday nights a lie? How many times was I fooled? When he got home, he went straight to the bedroom. The walls, once a refuge, now felt suffocating, weighed down by a betrayal he'd never expected. Ethan looked at their shared closet. Her clothes were there, neatly arranged, as if nothing had happened, as if this night were no different from any other. But something inside him knew that nothing would ever be the same. Without a second thought, he grabbed a suitcase from the back of the closet and started packing his clothes. Shirts, pants, shoes. Each piece he folded felt like putting away parts of a life he no longer recognized. The zipper of the suitcase closed with a sharp sound that cut through the heavy silence of the house. He paused, took a deep breath, and for the first time that night, let the emotional exhaustion wash over him. Just as he was leaving, his phone rang. He knew who it was before he even looked at the screen, Lisa. Calls started coming in one after another. For a moment, he hesitated, wondering if he should answer. What could she say that wouldn't make things worse? He let the phone ring, then finally decided to face reality, even if it meant hearing a painful confession. When he answered, Lisa's voice on the other end was desperate. "Ethan, please listen to me. It's not what you think. I love you. It was a mistake, a silly distraction. You have to understand, it doesn't mean anything." She spoke quickly, as if words could fix something so broken. He listened in silence, anger boiling inside him again. "Lisa," his voice came out calmer than he expected, almost cold. "That wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And that choice, he thought, had a price." Without waiting for an answer, he ended the call. With every word she spoke, it was clear that what they had was gone for good. Ethan left the house behind, driving off without a clear destination. He knew he wasn't going back that night. The life he knew had ended right there, at that table in the bar. The months that followed felt like limbo for Ethan. He moved into a small apartment, far from the house where he'd made so many memories with Lisa. The blank white walls reflected how he felt inside, empty. There was silence, not just around him, but within him too. A heavy silence, full of questions he avoided asking because he knew the answers didn't matter anymore. He was rebuilding his life, bit by bit, even though each step came with uncertainty. Still, Ethan found something interesting in that new emptiness. Gradually, he started to enjoy being alone. The space once filled by doubts and resentments, and by the shadow of a broken relationship, now gave him freedom. He created new routines, morning runs, afternoon coffee at a local cafe, calm nights where, for the first time in a long while, he felt at peace. It was a different kind of calm, one that came from slow, painful acceptance. What he had with Lisa was real, but it was now part of a past that wasn't coming back. Lisa, however, hadn't given up. Ethan knew she was unhappy. The occasional phone calls, the messages he barely glanced at, the pleas to talk, it all showed that Lisa still believed she could fix what was broken. She said she was sorry, that she missed him, that nothing was the same without Ethan around. Maybe, for a second, part of him wanted to believe her. Maybe at some point, he would have given in, thinking they could go back to how things were. But that Ethan, the one who would have offered a second chance without hesitation, didn't exist anymore. On a rainy afternoon, weeks after Lisa's last attempt at contact, she showed up at Ethan's apartment door. He was finishing cooking dinner when he heard the knock. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened the door, there she was. Lisa, pale-faced, rain-soaked hair, eyes puffy. She looked fragile, vulnerable in a way Ethan had never seen. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice low, almost a whisper. For a moment, Ethan hesitated. He felt something stir inside him, maybe a trace of the man who still cared about her. He stepped aside and let her in. Lisa walked in, drenched and trembling slightly, as though the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. "I can't take it anymore, Ethan," she said, voice breaking. "I'm miserable. You don't understand how much I regret this. I made a mistake and I'd give anything to turn back time and do things differently. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It wasn't." Ethan watched her silently. For the first time, Lisa was there without any masks, without excuses. There was only pain and regret in her eyes. He felt a tightness in his chest, but it wasn't like before. It was different. It was the feeling of watching someone beg for something he could no longer give. He folded his arms, looking away for a moment. "Lisa, we're not the same anymore. I'm not the same." She stayed quiet, waiting for him to say more, but the words she wanted to hear never came. What they had was broken, beyond the point of any apology or regret. Lisa, with nothing left to say, stood up slowly. There was a heavy sadness in her eyes, a bitter acceptance that everything they had was truly lost. And Ethan, even though he felt her pain, knew this was for the best. Sometimes, love ends and there's no way to go back. Ethan's apartment had never felt so quiet after Lisa left. The sound of the door closing behind her was the end of something that had died months ago. He stood there for a moment, staring at the door, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. There's something heartbreaking about watching someone so important walk out of your life for good, but there's also a sense of freedom in knowing he could finally move on. In the days that followed, Ethan allowed himself to think about everything that happened. He was no longer the man he'd been when it all began. He wasn't the man who would accept empty excuses or settle for a relationship built on broken promises. The divorce taught him a harsh but valuable lesson: love without respect and trust is just an illusion. And illusions can't sustain a life. As time went by, Ethan rediscovered who he was outside that relationship. He reconnected with old friends, took up hobbies he'd abandoned, and, most importantly, he learned to value himself in a way he hadn't in years. One afternoon, while strolling through a park near his new place, he stopped to watch a group of kids playing. They ran around without a care, laughing and tripping over each other. The simplicity of that scene made him smile. After all, life is made of simple moments, and he was starting to appreciate them again in a way he couldn't when he was stuck in an unhappy marriage. Watching the children, he remembered something his father used to say: life is like riding a bicycle. If you stop pedaling, you fall. And in that moment, Ethan realized that for a long time, he'd stopped pedaling. He'd gotten stuck in a relationship that didn't help him grow or move forward. But now, he was ready to start pedaling again. Months went by, and Lisa didn't try to reach him anymore. Ethan didn't know where she was or what she was doing, and honestly, he didn't care. She was part of a past that, while important, no longer defined him. The betrayal that once felt too heavy to bear was now just a chapter in his life, one he'd already closed. On a sunny morning, as he got ready for another ordinary day, Ethan looked at himself in the mirror. The man staring back was different from the one who'd looked back at him months ago. There was a calm in his eyes, an acceptance of who he was and what he'd been through. He had learned to love himself again, to treasure his own company, and to understand that true love can't exist without respect. And there, alone in his apartment flooded with sunlight, Ethan smiled. He didn't need anyone else to feel happy. He was finally at peace with himself. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.